So for those of you who have no idea why I'm standing here dressed the way I'm dressed currently, today's Super Bowl Sunday, and one of the two teams participating is the New England Patriots. I'm not a Patriots fan, I'll just say that. But you have to respect what they've done. And a lot of what they've managed to do over the past almost 2 decades is due to their head coach, whose name is Bill Belichick. And Bill's signature outfit is a hoodie with the sleeves cut off. So I am wearing this today to honor Bill because I want to use some of his wisdom, the wisdom that he has used in becoming arguably the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, as I talk about what I really wanted to talk about today. February is the month of strength. We've been working with the 12 powers of unity this year. And, for each month there is a power, and February's power is strength. Today is the day of our annual meeting, the day when we come together as a community, the day when we elect our leaders. So what I decided to talk about today was strong communities and strong leaders. And as I looked around to find some examples of those, I came across this guy. All right. So for those of you who really don't know anything about him, I will just say that in his, I guess now 17 plus seasons at New England, he's won his division, which is like the 4-team group that New England's in, 14 times, including a record 8 in a row. He has won 25 games in the playoffs. That is an all-time NFL record. 7 AFC championship games and 4 Super Bowls, and tonight he very well might win his 5th. He will also set a record for the most Super Bowls participated in at 10, including the ones that he was a part of with the teams he was with prior to coming to New England. It is not out of the realm of possibility of saying that once he retires, they may well rename the Lombardi Trophy the Belichick Trophy. And that's the trophy they give the winner of the Super Bowl. So he has come up with, in the past couple of decades of working with groups, something that he now calls the Patriot Way. And there are several things that he does to create teamwork. And as I did some research, I found some things that I think also apply to us. They apply to us as a church, and they are also lessons that were taught as far back as by Paul, as he was working with churches that he had founded across the Near East, and even 1 or 2 things that Jesus might have said. So when it comes to building a strong community, a group that works together and learns together and grows together and succeeds together, one of the first things that came to me was we do it together. And the example that I read was a well-documented story from past years, is when he would have an offensive or defensive lineman attempt to catch a punt in training camp. And if he was successful, everybody would get the night off. Now, for you folks that don't understand football, the offensive and defensive linemen are the big guys that use their arms as clubs, and they run into each other and try to push one way or the other. The punt is when you have to give the ball back to the other team, you kick it to them, and the ball goes flying through the air. Generally, at the other end of the punt, they have one of the little speedy guys that has really good hands. Usually it's either a wide receiver or a defensive back or maybe a running back. They're really good at catching the ball. Offensive and defensive linemen, they don't know how to catch the ball. But what Bill would do is he would get the team together and say, if you little guys can get those big guys to catch a punt, you get the night off. And it got them working together. And as it says, this brought together players from all ends of the roster. The smaller, quicker returners working with the big, burly behemoths on the line, and everyone in between gathering around to provide support. Paul had an idea very similar to that when he wrote to his congregation in Rome and said, "We who are strong in faith should help the weak with their weaknesses and not only please ourselves. There's quite a lot to that. I mean, I can tell you as somebody that's been in 12-step for a long time that the way it works is by people who have a little something sharing it with people who are looking for a little something. And it is actually as much help to the people who have it as to the ones who are trying to get it. They say that the best way that you can learn is by teaching something. I remember back in 1999 when I was at the Warrant Officer Candidate School at Fort Rucker, Alabama. And we had, I think there was about 70 of us going through the class at that time. And we had an extremely structured day. We had a lot of academic tests. We had people who failed out because of academic reasons. But during the evenings when we had study time, that was one of the few times that you could, if you chose, optionally group together. And instead of just studying by yourself, you could be part of a study group. And there was a study group that would regularly meet in my room. And because God blessed me with an ability to do rather well on tests, I spent a lot of my time helping some of my other fellow warrant officer candidates who were not quite so good. It probably forced me to spend more time studying that material than I would have otherwise on my own. I would have just relied on my own abilities to do well on those things. And I ended up with perfect scores on about half the tests that we took. But I was also blessed with having one of my classmates approach me the day that they pinned our rank on us. And he had his wife with him, and he grabbed me by the hand and said, I wouldn't have made it through this if it wasn't for you. Moments like that make the things that we do really worthwhile. And that is certainly not something to be missed, and it is a big part of why we do this together. So we really can't do that unless we do the second thing that helps us build strong communities, and that is we get to know each other. I cannot tell you how surprised I was when I came here. And, you know, from time to time I've met people and introduced them to other people, and they would look at you and say, well, how long have you been coming here? Well, I've been coming here for 20 years. Well, gee, so have I. I didn't know you. And that's because some of those people would sit, like, you know, back there where Jeff's sitting, and, you know, some of them would sit up there where Joan is sitting, and never the twain met, you know. It is important that we get to know each other. So Bill's idea, what he did, says, perhaps you noticed in some of the pictures snapped at Gillette Stadium, which is where they play up in New England, in recent weeks, offensive players wore plain blue shirts with a Patriots logo in the middle, while defenders were in gray. The only numbers were to be found on the small ones, like on the backs of the helmets and possibly on a pair of shorts. But anything to help build a more cohesive, unified team is right in his wheelhouse, and that's where the idea to go without numbers was hatched. They want us to learn each other's names and communicate better, one player said. What he found out was when guys were wearing jerseys with numbers on them, they'd say, oh yeah, it was number 75. Had no idea what number 75's name was, even though they work with the guy. But when number 75 is just wearing a plain, everybody's wearing plain shirts, you guys say, what's your name, buddy? You know, that's Vince, that's Joe. And so he actually forced people to get to know each other better simply by taking the numbers off of their jerseys. In another part of his letter to the Romans, Paul said, show family affection, not just any affection, show family affection to one another with brotherly love. Outdo one another in showing honor. You know, oh, no, after you. No, after you, right? That kind of thing. We're doing better at getting to know each other. We are, over a year ago, we started seriously doing small groups, and I want to kind of crank that up a notch, but I want us all to talk about it first. I want to see where everyone is with that. But I will tell you, the people that I have gotten to know through small groups in this church, I've developed a deeper relationship with than anyone, with the possible exception of the people that I've worked with on the board. And it has been tremendously powerful and tremendously rewarding. People that were, just someone I might shake hands with at the end of the service have become my friends. And that's priceless, especially to someone who has, is new in town and is newly divorced. Friends are priceless. So it's been a real blessing and something that I hope all of you will take the time to do. The third thing that I kind of took from Bill, Coach Belichick, that helps create a strong community is the idea that we don't rest on our laurels. And in his world, in 2010, he had many of the pictures inside Gillette Stadium taken down. And yeah, it was time for a fresh coat of paint on the walls, but removing hundreds of pictures from victories from the 2000 to 2009 seasons and not putting them back up also sent a powerful message to players that it was time to write their own history and put their own photos on the walls. I cannot tell you how many times in the 3.5, almost 4 years that I have been here, I've heard somebody talk about how, what a great thing somebody used to do, and just to pull a name out of the top of my head, what a great job Mary Ann Wise used to do decorating things, Well, Mary Ann's in Oklahoma. So we can't rest on those laurels and think about how great things used to be. We have to step it up and pick up the ball and run with it.
Her coleslaw was pretty good too.
Her coleslaw was pretty good too, right? We got to pick up the coleslaw ball. Yeah, and the Twilight Brigade, right? But we also cannot rest on our laurels when we get to a place in spirit. It's like, wow, I went through the classes and I'm a member now. Great. Now what? What's the next thing you're going to do to get your spiritual ball a little further down the field? Are you going to become involved in service? Are you going to continue to deepen your understanding by taking some more classes? Are you going to maybe become a prayer chaplain or become part of the Twilight Brigade? It is easy to say, okay, I'm done. I'm good. But to keep going, so many times back when I was in the church that I grew up in, people would say, well, you can't walk on water yet. But the truth is, it's not about walking on water. It's about realizing our oneness and making sure that everyone around us does too, because we're all in this together. And the way that we do that is we keep trying to get better. The Bible passage that came to me, it takes a long time to explain, so I'm just going to skip that. But the real short Cliff Notes version is when they picked the disciple to replace Judas, because they thought, well, we need to have 12 again. They had a choice between two guys. Metaphysically, one of them represents praise, like, oh, we did a great job. Yay, hoo-ah us. And the other one represents kind of reaching and striving and going on. Guess which one got picked? Reaching and striving guy, yeah? They weren't content to rest on their laurels. Now, when it comes to building strong leaders, Bill has two real simple rules that I think all of us can probably remember. Rule number 1 is do your job. Do your job. Rule number 2 is team first. So if we look in this church, what is our job? Right? Well, to me, one of the best summations of what it is we're looking to do, how we're trying to live, is found in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. It says, He's told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? So what's your job? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. Okay? Now, for us here in this church, what have we decided our job is? That's kind of like how we do it, but our job is we demonstrate divine love through spiritual practice, joyful community, and inspired outreach. And notice that towards the end there, it doesn't say or. Okay? Right? It's supposed to be all three. Because if all your job was spiritual practice, y'all could go up to a mountaintop and stare at your navel and go om. And you'd be good. Mission accomplished, job over. But that's not it. If all your job was to be in joyful community, well, hey, let's have a party. Right? Let's have lots of parties. Right? If all your job was inspired outreach, you could volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, or if you want to get real adventurous, go to the Peace Corps, Doctors Without Borders. But what we're saying our job is as a member of this spiritual community is to do all three of those things. We are going to engage in spiritual practice, and we are going to be part of a joyful community, and we are going to engage in inspired outreach. That's the job. So our leaders need to be participating at some level in all of those to really be able to say, I'm a leader in this community. That's it. That's doing your job. Team first is pretty simple. It's the idea, and in football, it's the idea that you don't draw attention to yourself. You don't, pull a Sharpie out of your sock after you score a touchdown and sign the ball and throw it into the stands. You run over, you hand it to the ref like you've been there before, and then you get ready for the next play. We don't get involved in that, hey, look at me, how great am I for doing what I'm doing. We think about the team first. This is one that Jesus had a tough time teaching. And I mean, the night before he dies, he's told them, I'm going to get crucified. What happens? The Keystone Cops, the disciples, start fighting over who gets to be in charge when he's gone. Luke chapter 22 says, a dispute also arose among them as to which one of them was to be regarded as the greatest. But he said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. It's about putting the whole before ourselves. A very simple definition of good and evil, and I think I've talked about this before, is that evil may be defined as being selfish, while good may be defined as being selfless. Now, I looked at something else that he did, and I came up with a third thing. And again, remember, Bill's were do your job and team first. But Bill also has a habit of doing something that I firmly believe in, and I would say that it is real leaders create leaders and work through them. And what he said about it was one of the things that I deal with, and I'm sure many of you do too, is just a volume of people. We have 53 players, and then guys on the practice squad, guys on injured reserve. So before you know it, you're well into the 60s, sometimes 70 players. It's impossible to deal with every one of those guys on an individual basis, on a daily basis. Amen, Bill. I feel your pain. Right? There's one of me. Look at you. Right? You pick your spots with the guys here and there, but you still have to connect with the whole team. One way is to stand there and address the team on a daily basis. You all want to show up every day? That would be awesome. We could do that. But another important way of connecting with your team in terms of leadership is your captains. As it relates to whatever organization you have other people responsible for other people below you, and I've always felt that having the right people as captains was crucial. And then he goes on to say that some of it's football related, but some of it's not football related. So just like some of this would be church related, but some of it's just about life, right? It's a good way for me to get a good pulse of the team, but also to hear their message, and in some cases, deliver my message to them, because it's going to carry more weight with people when it comes from somebody besides the head coach, right? Once those guys are in their positions, they're not just out there to walk out for the toss of the coin. That's really the least of their responsibilities. Their job really comes more to setting an example, showing leadership, and most importantly, communicating one way or the other, whether it's from the players to me or from me to the players, what we need to get the job done. So our leaders are actually doing the deal. They're doing their job. Our leaders are putting the team first, but our leaders also serve as a way for everybody to be able to communicate with me and the other leaders in this church, and for me to be able to get a message out to you. If you are contacted by somebody in leadership instead of me, please do not take that personally. It is not a slight. It's just that, like Moses, who had, Israel, and he's trying to take care of all of them. Finally, his father-in-law comes to him and says, this isn't the right way to do this. It's too much work for you to do alone. You cannot do this job by yourself. It wears you out, and it makes people tired too. Now listen, let me give you some advice, and I pray God will be with you. You should continue listening to the problems of the people, and I do. Right? And you should continue to speak with God about these things, and I do. You should explain God's laws and teaching to the people. I do my best. Warn them not to break the laws. Tell them the right way to live and what they should do, but you should also choose some of the people to be judges and leaders. Choose good men you can trust, men who respect God. Choose men who will not change their decisions for money. Make these men the rulers over the people. There should be rulers over 1,000 people, 100 people, 50 people, even over 10 people. So then Bill finally gets to the bottom line. He says, in the end, I would say the biggest key to it is the communication and having people that have a passion for the same thing you're trying to do. If somebody had to ask me, what I am passionate about is helping transform people's lives from a life filled with uncertainty and pain and aloneness to a life that is blessed with loving community and with health and with the ability to realize their innate divinity and their oneness with Spirit. That's a lot of words. I'll work on that. But I hope you're passionate about some of the same things. If nothing else, just about transforming lives, about helping people, about reaching out to others, and about becoming better yourself. And we do that best when we do it together. Please join me in prayer. Sweet Spirit, we recognize that our team is about to go back out on the field. When we leave these doors today, we will be confronted by all manners of things which may cause us disquiet. They may cause us fear. They may consternate us. They may make us wonder where you are. We affirm that you are in all things, and we affirm especially your presence in this place, in this body, in one another, and we give thanks. We give thanks for this church. We give thanks for the person to the left and the right of us. We give thanks for the people who were here before us, who left us this legacy of love. We give thanks for the children who are about to walk into this service. Mostly, sweet Spirit, we give thanks for you, for your love, your Spirit, for the Christ that lives in each and every one of us. For that, we are most grateful. So it is.